So let's start with a hamstring stretch. We bring the right leg out straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. And then as usual, I think you all know we want to let the upper body relax and let gravity take over. I'll just mention, because I haven't mentioned it in a while, if you look like this, then that means you should probably be sitting on something and perhaps even bending, putting something under the knee here so it's bent. That will loosen up the hamstrings and allow you to tilt forward. So it's the one concern we have in this posture. I see sometimes people like this. It's usually a guy and he just has so much tension in his hamstrings that he is like that. So one way to test for this is if you were to just fall asleep, would you fall backward or would you fall forwards? So if I'm here, if I relax completely, I just stay where I am. Okay, so that's a good test for this posture. Is imagine that you fell asleep. Imagine you're completely relaxed. Nothing should change. Okay, that's essentially what we want. Now, the caveat to that is that we do want to feel a stretch here. Okay, so if I'm perfectly relaxed, but I'm not feeling any stretch, then that's where you need to start communicating with me. You're welcome to experiment on your own, but again, I do not recommend this, which is what most people will go to. It'll feel really good in the moment, probably, but long term, it is opening you up to damaging your spine. And you really, if there's one part of your body you don't want to mess with, it's your spine, it's your back, okay? About 80% of Americans end up with a back problem. So 8 out of 10, okay, pretty simple to understand that. So most Americans, right, the majority of Americans, we don't really want to be in that group. So I am in that group, unfortunately. I think I learned a lot of this stuff already too late, and I had a lot of bad habits. And then there also might be the factor of teaching yoga isn't the same as doing yoga. And in certain respects, teaching yoga can put certain kinds of stresses on your body that you wouldn't otherwise experience. So I don't know exactly the cause, but it is getting better and better, and I expect to fully heal at some point. I'm actively working on completely healing my back. So it doesn't prevent me from doing anything. So it's not like I can't do back bends or side bends or forward bends, or I can't hike or walk or run. I can do everything that anyone else can do, but what I notice is in certain positions I'll feel some pain. And again, that's in contrast to, say, when I was 18, I didn't feel any pain in any position. And that's really the kind of the gold standard that we want to maintain throughout our life. A lot of people in our culture accept what they consider the truth, that as they get older, there's just going to be more and more pain in more and more places, and they're just going to have to learn to live with that. Maybe that's true, but I don't accept that as truth. I think that we can question that narrative, and it may be well possible to get quite advanced in years and still be completely pain-free. So I've shared with some of you that I've gone through a journey of healing my hip, healing my shoulder. So I have evidence that these things can be reversed, and healing my back. So my back, I kind of re-injured it, if you will, or it's returned to being in pain. But I suspect, given some of my latest explorations, that might have as much to do with the way I sit at the computer as anything. So again, these are the types of investigations that we need to look at. If we're having pain, where might it be originating from or coming from? One of the things to be aware of, since I'm on the topic, as we do age, is inflammation. So some doctors actually have coined the term inflammaging. So in other words, inflammation and aging are so closely related that it's hard to tell like what is causing what. Are you getting older because inflammation is increasing in your body, or is inflammation increasing because you're getting older? Let's switch sides. Okay, this is the half butterfly. I didn't mention on the first side, but since all of you have been before, you know you can support your knee, forearms, and forehead as necessary. Okay, so don't be afraid to do that if you need it. So inflammation is a real problem for modern people like us. A friend of mine who's a surgeon, she said that the studies show how inflammation is linked with most of the chronic and major diseases that we have in this country. So a lot of the things that we have major problems with, cancer and other things like that, they tend to be linked with inflammation. Now, many people, they don't think at all about inflammation. They feel pain in their body. That's all they think of. They don't think of the pain as actually being caused by inflammation. There's some research that shows that sites that were damaged in the past are very often sites where inflammation will tend to show up. So let's say you broke your ankle when you were 7, and then it healed and you felt fine all through your 20s and 30s, let's say. You never noticed it, you never thought about it. And then you get into your 40s and all of a sudden you start to have a pain in that same ankle. So this is an example of what I'm talking about, that even though that site seemed to have healed completely, it actually is vulnerable to inflammation as inflammation begins to go up in your body. So this is all research. So this is not, yoga doesn't talk a lot about inflammation. Okay, this is coming from the science and research that I've read. But these are the types of things that your doctor probably isn't going to mention. They are just going to possibly give you a painkiller or recommend a surgery or something like that if you're like, oh, my back hurts or my knee hurts or my ankle hurts. And that's just what they've been trained to do. So educating people about inflammation, about the aging process and what sorts of things to expect and what kinds of things you can do to countermeasure that, that's just not the way that a modern doctor has been trained. So this is one of the reasons why I really am an advocate for taking responsibility for your own health. I think until recently, and many people even in modern times, they just assume that if they have a problem, in other words, pain, they go to their doctor and their doctor fixes it. So again, this is advocating responsibility to somebody else. You basically say, well, I don't do anything. I just live my life. And then when I feel pain, I go to the expert. The expert tells me what's going on, and then that's the end of the story. But we live in an age, in a time where there's no real reason to do that, and it's probably not going to produce the best results. So there's a lot of research you can do. There's a lot of self-education you can do. And then there are a lot of things that you can do that may never come on your doctor's radar, or even if your doctor is aware of it. I was once told by a doctor who was a friend of a friend, she had just finished training, and she said that in training they actually told them not to recommend lifestyle choices or alteration to patients. And they were told not to do that because they're like, people won't change. So that's a kind of a dark view of people. It may be accurate. That might come from experience, but you're not even really giving people the choice, and you're also assuming the worst of people. So you're basically saying, hey, you've got inflammation. You know, if you changed your diet, you could get your inflammation down. What this person was trained to do is don't even mention that. So again, is this something that is actually part of their training? Is that why doctors don't mention these alternatives? Or is it just they don't know about it? Or they just don't have the time? Doctors are very busy. They're overworked. Again, I've had some people very close to me who are doctors, and I know firsthand they are overworked. So I am not trying to, again, lay the blame on the doctor. I'm saying really it's up to you to take responsibility, to decide that, you know, it's not just going to the doctor is going to solve all your problems necessarily. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. We'll rebound for a few moments. All right, let's bring the legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze and shake it out. And then we can hinge up to seated. Let's come into a tabletop, and we will take the right leg to the right for the kickstand. Okay, so take the legs apart until you feel a stretch here. The feet can flex or point in any direction. You can stay on your hands, drop down to your elbows. You can move your torso to the left or to the right. And again, you want to feel a nice stretch on the inside of the thigh. You also want to feel safe. So again, if at any time and for any reason you don't feel safe with what you're doing, please communicate that to me, okay? So these are your adductors. This is one of the 4 groups. Again, we had hamstrings in the last set. Now we are targeting the adductors there. So returning to inflammation, there's a lot we can do to reduce inflammation. You know, there's so much, and there are different things. That's part of where maybe the message we grew up with in the West, that there's a magic pill or there's a magic surgery, there's one answer to health and healing, may not actually serve us. So the idea that, okay, I have inflammation or I have this condition, I'm going to get one pill or one answer that's going to solve all of that for me, that may not serve us as well as the idea that perhaps there are many different things that I will need to do in order to optimize my health. So we'll just use inflammation as an example because, again, inflammation tends to affect many other things. It tends to exacerbate or cause other problems, make them worse, or even be the source of these problems. So again, pain in the body is very often caused by inflammation. Now, I want to be clear, inflammation is actually a natural process, and it's actually healthy when it is happening in response to an acute injury. So if I bump my elbow or bruise my elbow, or I cut myself, or I sprain my ankle, inflammation will naturally arise because it actually helps with the healing process, the initial healing process. So that's not a bad thing. And I don't necessarily want to stop that inflammation. So that's called an acute injury. So if I just got injured, there's going to be inflammation, and that is good. That's a healthy response. What we find happening with modern people, especially again as we get a little older, is we get inflammation and it never goes away. So this is where, you know, you might wake up with a pain in your back one day. Now maybe you had done something that caused that pain, you didn't realize it, But why does the pain not go away? Why does it stay there? Is there still an injury? Like I said, I'm actually able to do everything, but there's some pain there. It may be that whatever caused the inflammation is long gone. There's actually no damage there. It's just the pain of the inflammation. So a lot of getting inflammation down, again, I think requires a holistic approach. And this is where I think the yogis and the Taoists kind of got things right. They might have got it right by default because they just didn't have drugs and surgery, which are very powerful. So again, we might grow up in the West with the impression that I just need a surgery, I need a drug that's going to solve all my problems. Because I think this is propagated by our culture, this idea. Oh, I went to the doctor, he gave me XYZ drug, and it's all better. But I think we're finding that this is happening less and less for people. Many people, that is their go-to. They do go to the doctor and they ask for something and they might get something, but then they find that maybe it fixed the problem for a little while and then the problem came back, or it never actually really fixed the problem, or it fixed the problem, but there were such negative side effects that they, the solution was maybe as bad or worse than the initial problem. So a holistic approach is not looking for a silver bullet, not looking for a magic pill or a magic solution. Rather, it's doing everything in our power, educating ourselves and doing everything in our power to try and reverse the condition. Let's switch sides. So again, I think in our culture, unfortunately, most of us grow up with an attitude, we're encouraged to have this attitude like, my health, my well-being, the function in my body, that's not my problem. I eat what I want, I do what I want, I enjoy my life, and if there's a problem, that is my doctor's problem. That is my insurance company's problem. That's why I pay them. So I just do whatever I want, enjoy myself. I eat when I want, what I want. I just ignore labels. I just party, right? Drink what I want, when I want, and there shouldn't be any consequence. And if there is, I go and I get the magic pill and it solves all my problems. But I think we're learning the hard way that it just doesn't work that way. Everything we put in our body is going to have a direct impact and effect, not just on our physical health, but our mental clarity, our emotional well-being, our emotional health, right? And other things as well. So I have a friend I'll share with you, and she had been, and this is nothing against, I'm not advocating for any diet choice. I'm just sharing someone's journey, okay? So please be clear on that. But she had struggled with depression for much of her life. I mean, like really bad, like show-stopping depression, where it's like I can't get, I don't even want to get out of bed. I can't go for a walk. I keep eating things that are bad for me. I know they're bad for me, but I can't stop because that's my only comfort is food. That's it, right? Eating something that comforts me. So again, this is, somebody might look at her and be like, well, just do something about it, do better, whatever it might be. Well, she was doing really the best that she could. And she was doing everything in her power to heal, but nothing really seemed to be hitting it. She was doing a lot of spiritual work, psychological work. And this is important for us to understand because there are limits to what spirituality can do for us, exercise, diet. These are pieces of a puzzle, but they're not the complete puzzle, okay? So interestingly, she was talking with a friend and she was describing her condition, and her friend said, I think it's carnivore diet might help with the problems that you're having. Now, this friend was the friend of mine who I know who's conveying the story. She had been vegan for a long, long time. And so when she heard about this, like, oh, just eating meat kind of thing, she like just balked. She laughed. She was like, oh, yeah, that sounds healthy. Like, I'm just going to eat meat. Well, the interesting thing about suffering and desperation is if it gets bad enough, we might be willing to try something that we just don't believe is going to work, or we're reluctant to try or reluctant to believe, because at a certain point you're like, oh, I'll try anything. So she actually tried it, and she reported to me, at least the last time I spoke with her, that about 95, 98% of her depressive symptoms and effects completely gone. So now I'm not saying that if you suffer from depression, you should go on a carnivore diet, that's going to solve it for you. Her issues might be different than your issues, but it's an example of she was doing spiritual work, she was starting to exercise, and then it seems like maybe the diet was the missing key for her. Now, again, I think from reading Peter Attia's book, who's a doctor, and he's much more learned in this than I am, he says that there isn't one diet that fits all. So really the best approach to diet is try something and then see how it feels, right? Try something for 30 days, see how it feels, see how your body responds. So she had actually done, I think, a 30-day fast, like a water fast. So she had basically cleansed her body completely. And then when she started adding things back in, and she started adding in some of her old go-to vegan foods, she noticed the, again, inflammatory response. It was inflammation. Can inflammation cause depression? Sure, it can cause inflammation in your brain, and that can affect your brain function and your mood. Okay, let's go ahead and come on out of that. So again, these are things that we may, I mean, I don't know about you, maybe people you talk, you hang out with talk about this stuff all the time. I had to learn this the hard way. So I had to research, I had to read lots of books, I had to be interested and curious. So this is why I share it with you, because I'm assuming these are things that may not be on your radar, and they're things that I found valuable. If you don't find them valuable, it's fine, just ignore me. It's really just meant as like an offering here, this might be of help to you. Okay, let's bring the legs in, give them a little shake out, and then hinge up to seated. And then once you're upright, we'll come into the tabletop position and stretch things out a little bit. So doing the bear pose here. And when you're done with that, the down dog. Okay, let's bring that right knee toward the wrist, the foot across the other side. And we're doing the sleeping swan. We want to feel it in the glutes here, okay? Now your front foot can flex or point. It can be close to your left hip or drawn up level with the knee so that your shin is parallel with the front edge of your mat. Your hips can rock to the right or to the left. And you could stay up on your hands if you want. I'm just doing this because I'm speaking to you, but you're probably more comfortable on your forearms. And you can rest your head on something if your head is floating. The head is actually pretty heavy, so it can be difficult to hold it up. It might tire your neck out. So, does diet affect inflammation? Absolutely. There are food choices you can make that reduce inflammation, and there are food choices that you can make that increase inflammation. And I'll say this, and this is based on an author named Dave Osprey. there are quote-unquote healthy foods that cause crazy inflammation. Okay, so this is where, again, this sort of idea that, okay, it's a vegetable, so it must be good for me. That's a little bit too rudimentary. Like most things in life, certain things may be good for you. They might be good for certain people who have a certain constitution, and they may be terrible for other people. So again, I think trial and error. If you have access to testing, if you can afford to get tested and get a panel and look at different things as you make changes, that's probably ideal. I can't afford to do that all the time. So for me, a lot of it is a feel thing. Try something out for a little while, see how my body responds, see how my energy level is, see how things, it's less than ideal, but this is probably how the yogis and the Taoists figured out most of what they figured out, because they didn't have lab testing. Okay, so they would experiment with different diets, techniques, practices, and they would figure out what works. They would share it with others. Others would say, yeah, that works for me too. And then that would start getting codified over time. Okay, so different process than, scientific testing. But again, if you can afford it, by all means, get tested regularly. Every time you make a change, you add something, take something away. So diet definitely affects inflammation. Heat affects inflammation, and not in the way that you might think. Actually doing things like sauna, infrared blankets, red light exposure, things of that nature. These have been shown to actually reduce inflammation. So we live in Georgia and everyone hates the heat, but going out in the sun and exercising, actually really sweating at least a few times a week could be really, really beneficial for your health. So currently, I think the research is sauna 4 times a week, again, has a lot of positive effects. And one of those effects, again, is reduction in inflammation. At the other end of the spectrum is actually cold plunge. So you could start with a cold shower, and then you can maybe fill a bathtub with cold water and put some ice in there. And if you really want to go I don't know, all out, then you could buy a specific, a specified cold plunge like tub for yourself and do it that way. But again, my message tends to be that there are simple and affordable things that we can do, almost anybody can do, to begin to improve these things. So again, researching, finding out which foods are inflammatory, which ones are not, adjusting our diet, that can greatly improve things for you. Heat exposure, this is one of the reasons why hot yoga is probably as popular as it is we're exercising in heat, which is shown to increase the benefits of the heat. Let's switch sides. So again, heat exposure is good for you. Exercise is good for you. And then combining the two together is even better. Now, I will say, if you over-exercise, you can actually create inflammation. Okay, so again, it's not a one-and-done magic pill, silver bullet, I don't have to pay attention to how I feel kind of thing. It is a matter of listening to your body, seeing how it responds. I'll give you an example from my own life. I recently have started doing regular resistance training in addition to yoga. So yoga has some resistance training in it. The push-ups that we do, the arm balances that we do, the standing postures that we do, those are all resistance. We're using our body weight to challenge the muscles and to fatigue the muscles. So that's a good thing. But I decided for myself that this is probably not enough, that I would like to add more and be a little more targeted in my approach. So I started adding it in. The program I was doing had us starting with 4 times a week, which I started with and seemed okay. And then eventually you graduated to 6 times a week. Now, when I started doing the 6 times a week, my neck was locked up, my back and shoulders were constantly in pain. And I went to see my massage therapist, and he was like, look, man, just chill out. Like, whatever you're doing, just take a break, let your body heal and recover. And this is what's great about having a team that you work with, a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a physical therapist, someone who's another set of eyes on your health and your body, and another opinion maybe about what you should be doing. So I think I was in such a rush to try and get into this, and I was following this routine, and it said, 6 times a week. I was like, okay, 6 times a week, here we go. And it just wasn't working. The side effects were so negative. I was just constantly in pain. And what was probably happening is my body didn't have time to recover, which is important. When you exercise, do resistance training, you're generally creating micro tears in the muscles. You're breaking down the muscle. And then what you want is you want to rest your body enough for it to restore itself, repair itself. And how do you know? You're probably no longer sore or stiff or in pain. So it's a very natural thing, isn't it? If you were in the wild and you went on a hunt and you ran a lot one day, and then the next day your muscles were all sore and fatigued and tired, well, the next day you'd probably take it easy. That would be most likely the thing that you would do. You probably wouldn't go right back out and start, doing the hardest thing again, because your body was kind of signaling, hey, we need a little bit of rest. So sometimes we do need to overcome resistance, physical discomfort and pain, but there are other times when it's a signal. It's telling us something, and we need to heed that message. So for me, I had read from several different sources that in terms of resistance training, oftentimes 3 times a week is good. So right now I'm at 3 times a week, and definitely much more free of pain and discomfort. And we'll see. If I don't start building muscle the way that I would like, then I might bring it up to 4 times a week and then see how that goes. But 3 times also allowed me more time to do some of the other things, like the heat exposure, the sauna blanket, cold baths, other things, walking, which is very, very important I consider very important for my health as well. So that's just an example of what I'm speaking about. If we're too dogmatic, or we're just sort of going by some formula and we're not paying attention to what's actually happening in our body, then we might overdo it. I do believe in the future I'll be able to do more before I reach that state. But again, you got to give your body time to adapt and to get used to what you're asking it to do. Once it does, you can begin to increase the amount or the how often you're doing something. Okay, let's go ahead and come on out of that one. We'll bring those legs in, give ourselves a little squeeze, shake it out. And then hinge on up to seated. Okay, half saddle is next, so let's fold the right foot back. The toes can point back or out to the sides. The knee can point straight ahead or it can angle out. You can sit on the ground or you can sit on a block. You want to feel the stretch here in the front of the right thigh. So if you feel that, you're just going to stay where you are. And if you don't, you can begin lowering back to the hands, elbows, onto a bolster, crown of your head, or all the way back onto your back, okay? I often get the question, is it okay my knee is off the ground? It's perfectly fine. You can see my knee is off the ground slightly, and it's not a problem, okay? So inflammation, there are also supplements that are known to reduce inflammation. Turmeric is a big one, but there are other ones as well. So again, it's not really my job to tell you all, the specific supplements that you could take or the dietary changes you can make. It really is your responsibility. What I'm trying to do is just inspire you and maybe put this on your radar that this is something that you would want to spend some time doing. Again, I think the way we are brought up in this country is this idea that I just do whatever I want, and when something goes wrong, I go to the expert, and the expert fixes it with one pill or one surgery. This is what Peter Attia calls medicine 2.0. And he says that we need to move into the next phase of medicine, okay, preventative, and taking our responsibility away from those, in medicine, expecting them to know everything and to do everything for us, and just to start to do some research on our own, educate ourselves. Because what's more important than your health? I mean, honestly, if you're in constant pain, is that going to affect your joy and how much you enjoy life? If you have to constantly take some expensive drugs in order to lower your blood pressure or keep your blood sugar in check or whatever it might be, is this really how we want to live? But many of us believe that that's just the way that it is. If the doctor says I need this drug, then I don't have any other choice but to listen to the doctor. But the truth is you do have choice, but that choice comes with responsibility. So I'm not saying it's easy and I'm not saying it's a quick fix, but I am saying it's worth the effort. At least it has been in my case. So diet, supplementing, these are things that we can do. Again, heat exposure, cold exposure, these also affect inflammation. And then one that people are very resistant to is the idea of what's called grounding or earthing. It's really not complicated. It's not so far out, but for some reason people are very resistant to the idea. I'm not sure why. It's all based in science. So the idea is that until recently, human beings always walked either directly on the earth with their feet, or they wore leather coverings for their feet. Now, leather actually will conduct electricity, especially when it has a little bit of moisture. So if you were wearing leather shoes and socks and you were perspiring a little bit, or if the ground were slightly damp, which it often is, the shoes you were wearing would actually be conducting electrons from your feet, from your body, to the earth. Now, this idea of grounding or earthing is that actually is a natural process that reduces inflammation in our body. Because when you come into contact with the earth, it's pulling positively charged ions out of your body. And that's part of what causes inflammation, is the buildup of these positively charged ions. So when we invented rubber shoes, rubber insulates you from the ground. So the electrical current cannot come from the ground and reach your body as long as the shoes are the only thing touching the earth. This is what most of us wear these days. So if you look at most of your shoes in your closet, they're all going to have rubber soles. And those rubber soles insulate you from the earth. What that means is all these excess positively charged ions have nowhere to go. They can't leave your body, okay? All right, let's switch sides. So what is the answer? What's the solution to that problem? Well, one answer would be you could try and find shoes that all have leather soles that don't have that kind of rubber insulation. Good luck. I don't think you're going to find it. It's very difficult. There are a handful of companies that make mostly sandals that have that feature. They actually have like a disc, a metal disc on the bottom of the shoe that is, wired to the sole, so that when you're wearing these sandals, you're actually grounding on the earth. Another answer is you take off your shoes and you just walk barefoot on the earth. Now the thing is, people will do that for like 5 minutes and think that's good enough. It's not. You would need to probably do it for, 30 minutes, an hour, maybe more daily in order for it to really be effective, I suspect, in order for it to really reduce the inflammation. And the question is, are you going to do that? When it's cold outside and it's raining, are you really going to go out barefoot and walk on the earth? In some parts of town, it's even hard to find earth to walk on. You've got pavement. Everything's paved over. So the solution that I like, that I find is easiest, is you can get a bracelet, you can get a mat, you can get a blanket that actually can be connected to the ground wire on your wall. So your outlets have 3 prongs. 2 are for the electrical current, and 1 is for the ground. So if your outlet has been wired properly, and you can test it, the round hole goes to the ground. So that is if, like, say, lightning strikes or a piece of electrical equipment short circuits and a lot of electricity starts being emitted, it will go through that round hole to the earth, to the ground. Because again, the earth is negatively charged. So it's a negative polarity. And again, inflammation in our body or a strong electrical current is a positive charge. So it will be drawn to the earth instead of jumping out of the socket and, say, striking you, electrocuting you, okay? So this is the system that we have. So as long as your outlet is wired properly, then that's going to go to the ground. And so what you do is you buy this, it could be, again, a bracelet or anklet, or it can be a little pad that you work at your desk. Again, it could be actual like sheets that you lay on at night. And you plug that into the ground, and then you just sit there. It's just touching your skin directly somewhere, and then that's pulling those positively charged ions out of your body. So I use it when I sleep. I just put something on my ankle and I sit there. I actually learned about this, and then shortly after learning about it, a student of mine had mentioned that her husband was scheduled for shoulder surgery. He had a lot of pain and inflammation in his shoulder. Now, she had a lot of health problems, and she had tried Western medicine to no success. So she had tried and tried and tried, and nothing really seemed to address the problem. So she started looking into alternative, quote unquote, alternative or Eastern medicine. She started getting better. So as part of her journey, she discovered about earthing or grounding, and so she bought a sheet for their bed. Now, her and her husband, they sleep in the same bed. So she didn't get it for him or his surgery, she got it for herself. But he was sleeping on it by default. Well, he was scheduled for surgery, and after a couple of weeks sleeping on this bed, she said that The pain went away. He went back to the doctor. The doctor was like, yeah, you don't need surgery. So again, I'm not promising anything for you, but you never know. The nice thing about a lot of these solutions is they're not that expensive. They're not like surgery or an expensive drug. Turmeric is very affordable. You can get a sauna blanket for not that much money. You can take a cold shower for free. Again, earthing or grounding, you can get one of these bracelets or anklets for like, I don't know, $6, $10. It's not a lot. So these things, again, I'm not saying any one of them is going to be a magic bullet, but I credit a lot of the healing that's happened for me, my hip, my shoulder, with being very diligent about reducing inflammation in my body. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. Okay, you can bring your legs in, give yourself a little squeeze out. So I'm going to share one last tidbit of information. And again, take it or leave it. But this is, again, based on science and research. If there's one change you were going to make that would improve the situation with inflammation and overall your health, it would probably be cutting out refined sugars or really reducing them to an almost imperceptible level in your diet. They're in many things, so when you go out to eat, it's inevitable you're going to be consuming it in bread, in salad dressings, in places you wouldn't think, in a seasoning on a steak. All of these will have refined sugars in them to enhance the flavor. So are you going to be able to cut it out completely? Probably not. Anytime, again, you're dealing with sort of a public space with food, you're going to encounter these. But at home, that is a place where you can choose to make different choices and hopefully reduce. So reducing sugar consumption, refined sugars, fructose, sucrose, that will really, really improve your health. I still eat some every now and then, but it's rare. So it's not on a regular basis. It's not daily. It's not a regular thing. Your body can handle a little bit of it. But again, eating a lot of it, drinking a big soda or several a day, that's definitely going to lead to and cause excess inflammation. All right, everyone. So thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you learned something. Let me know if there are any questions about anything. I'm happy to answer or discuss anything with you. Otherwise, have a lovely weekend, and I'll hope to see you for the flow class, which is on Monday at 12:30. Thanks again.